collaborate with you on a snake bite study if you're willing to.
We
had talked about it. When I was at Arizona, we had talked about
Yeah,
it. We came to the
we submitted abstract as a
Yeah, this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I look forward to reading it.
I'm glad that one worked out then, Shrikar. When we had talked about it, we were going to do like a call schedule with all of the fellows and faculty, and it sounded really miserable. So you guys got it done.
It's still ongoing. We submitted with the preliminary data.
Good.
Yeah. And how long have you guys been doing that, Srikar?
We probably good 1 year maybe so far.
Yeah. So that's actually not that bad. I mean, I've heard of studies on something like that they're like, well, I'm on year 3.
No.
Srikar, you and I can talk about Reason. And I think Lori too, right? And Cray, I don't know if you guys did Reason. But.
We did Reason. When I was at Arizona, not here at Tennessee though.
Yeah.
We have a question. Do you have any tips for managing fellow projects? How do you have protected time to write and kind of follow other people's projects that aren't primarily yours?
That actually brings us to our next topic of collaboration. And I think like collaboration and mentorship and being mentored, I think they all kind of go together. Sorry, Shrikar, I interrupted you.
Go ahead. I know I was going to say that's a very, it's a tough situation where you have your own projects going on and your fellows come in and they are going to stay there for a year. And then they have lots of stuff to learn, including management skills and advanced scanning and whatnot. And then they have to do a project. One approach we have taken is the one internal the residents who from our program, and they've matched or they agreed to join a fellowship. That gives us a little bit of time to prep them ahead of submit the IRB proposals and so on, even before they start in July 1st. And actually those projects really go smooth. However, the ones who come in external candidates, you really have to pick a project because I feel like you literally have only 3 months for them to do a project. It looks like a year, it's not a year. By the time they get settled on, it is September, then they take the boards, and then they have oral boards coming up. June is junk month. So we know that. So it'll literally have 3-4 months to do it. So a few approaches we have taken. Some is like educational studies. Lori has done with us when she was here, where you have a certain technique you teach your residents. You go there, the study is done in 3 days, where you pick the conference days and blah, blah, blah. So you're done. So that's easy. Or a very high impact survey, they can do it. Or we do have like retrospective studies going on. They actually become a part of the study as opposed to picking up their own project itself. So I think, fellow who comes in, I have fellows who want to do research and some did not want to, just want to meet the requirement. So that also factors in when you're actually managing the fellow research. So I think it is a challenging thing for fellowship directors to mentor their fellows and get the project done. I think I only have 2 fellows who actually submitted their manuscript by June before they graduated. And then, those are the ones who actually got their acceptance in the first go. One of them was fairly recent, July of last year, June. Josie Valenzuela was my last fellow, who did a study, submitted a manuscript in June, and which already got accepted. So that doesn't happen that often, not because they didn't want to do it, but there's so many other things going on during the fellowship.
Yeah, and I think that speaks also to like vetting the feasibility of a fellow scholarly project that needs to be done by June is very different than the feasibility of a really good idea. It might not be feasible to take their very best idea and do that as a scholarly project for fellowship.
Yeah, we don't, I think over time, Srikar, you may or may not agree with this, but I think the concept of research in an ultrasound fellowship has been, probably a little diluted, but I would say more like handcrafted to the site. So I know when I did my fellowship many years ago, I mean, gosh, the world was my oyster, like nothing was getting published. So I was able to get it done because really, I mean, it was so innovative. People were so excited about doing something that it was easy to do. But now with the resident education requirements, the fellowship requirements, the QA, I think you're right. Like we're pulled in many more directions. And I've come to also adopt Srikar's stance. Like, if you get someone who's like, I just want to, study research ultrasound, okay, well then we should probably really work hard towards getting something published. But if you're kind of on the side, then I'm just happy with participation. And what does that look like? That looks like, getting back to the question, maybe, focusing on writing the abstract. It might be someone else's data, but you're going to write the abstract. It might be patient enrollment. It might be just getting the abstract, someone else to study through the IRB. I think those are all valuable lessons that may, now they don't necessarily fulfill, I think, as written, the fellowship requirement for research, which is, I think, fairly vague as the words are, and I don't have them in front of me. But, I allow that to happen because a year is really not a lot of time to have a education and research mission, not to mention a clinical mission, all piled on top of you. But getting to the specific question, I don't give them like a writing week off. I think they have enough free time to learn how to do it. And the truth is, as you become, I think, faculty, you have to learn how to do your time management and, figure out how to write it. Now, I learned in my fellowship that you need to help significantly write abstracts, write papers, and also vet presentations, because we presume that people have those skills in the research arena, and they frequently don't. And I think that's also a valuable lesson. So, but I don't protect that time. I just say, you need to make the time to meet with me, because that's what you're going to face next year. I mean, you can't have this, sort of like idyllic setting. Like, you're going to have to figure out how to block out time to write this stuff. So, and I mean, I'm guilty too. Like, I have a manuscript that's gone through like 5 revisions, and I'm like, I got to block out time to write it to finish the edits right now, and it's driving me nuts. So that's just life.
Yeah, on this topic also, and this kind of segues with Laura's next question about transitioning or developing fellows into junior faculty. Like, when it comes to the fellow scholarly project requirement, I for one have noticed that a lot of the skills that you need to be able to do research, like the micro skills, like being able to do a good lit review, being able to use reference software seamlessly, being able to write efficiently, being able to do a submission, like those little micro skills are what I hope a fellow gains so that they can transition to be junior faculty easier. Because if they don't learn those skills early on, then every project is more of a struggle than it should be. And I mean, that's personally how my thought is on fellows doing their scholarly projects, is that it doesn't have to be the best project ever, but I want them to learn all of those micro skills in the process so that it's less pain on the other end. Any thoughts on that from you guys?
I would recommend, if somebody want to learn some basic research skills, I mean, residency doesn't give you enough time to learn all that stuff. Me and Dan and I've gone through EMBERS course, ASAP EMBERS course. Certainly it requires a 2-week commitment. And also now one of my junior faculty, Josie, has taken the SAEM ARMED, ARMED course. I mean, those are really good courses because these are taught by emergency physicians and leading researchers, and that they also kind of go over everything you just talked about, what software you need to use and so on. So all the nitty-gritty details. So if somebody is actually interested in doing research and that is something they're pursuing academic career, I think those are good courses to take, and I think they will bring them up to speed quickly. And I think those faculty are going to be a lot more productive.
Yeah, I have formal research training, and I sat with other than just EM people in the room, and everyone's missing those skills. It's not just emergency medicine. Now, some people, I think the old model, and by old, I'm talking like in the 80s and 70s, there were no courses. So you really relied on a relationship with a mentor, and your expertise, your development of expertise was only going to be as good as your relationship with that mentor. So that is an older model that exists. But I had formal mentors within this sort of additional research training, and man, those mentors barely had time for me. They were more like gonna tell me, just give me like overall general guides. They were not in emergency medicine. They would just try to guide my career one way or the other. So I think that mentorship relationship model might be a little frayed right now. I think it's whereas I think in the past, or maybe in a lab, I don't see any PhDs on the call, but in a lab, like the guy's with you like 24/7, so he can say, oh yeah, think about it like this, or oh, that problem deserves this type of research model. But in the clinical arena for clinical research, I think, like Srikar said, getting that additional training is worth it if you think research is what your career is going to be. I don't know, Srikar, if I would send someone to Embers for 2 weeks who was not saying or believing that they wanted to do a research thing. Like I wouldn't make it part of the fellowship for the, for the requirements, but I would definitely put it on that first year out of fellowship pathway that you're alluding to, Lori, with, how you develop like junior faculty when they're leaving. Like that would definitely be on my, all right, well, next year you're going to do this course, and then we'll go from there. But so I think bottom line is outside training, good. If you have a fantastic mentorship relationship, probably even better. But for the most part, you're going to have to go to external sources to learn. And I think both SAEM and ASAP are great resources, especially at the national meeting. And Srikar, I think you've done like grant writing and manuscript writing courses as well at SAEM.
I did.
Yeah. Did you find those helpful?
I think so. I think, again, you take those things and you got to put into practice. You can take all the courses, and that's the problem, right? So you can go to all courses you want, but you just have to put that into practice.
Yeah.
You still have to actually do the work, even if you did the work. So, and then my next topic is on collaboration. I see a question in the feed from one of the participants on, so how do you decide how much legwork to have done before reaching out to collaborators?
I guess like how much should you know before you reach out?
Yeah. It says, does having more things in place make it seem more appealing to join, or do people feel more invested if they've had more influence in creating from the start? I think it's an interesting question. I don't know if there's any easy answer to it, because there's both sides to it. You have to have a well enough formed opinion, I think.
Yeah. And you don't want to, you want to go in there and give them, this one guy, I remember he told me, he's like, you always want to give people just enough. Okay. Meaning like you want to give them just enough so that it sounds like, oh, wow, this is someone that has thought about all these issues and can carry out the project. But you don't want to give them too much that they think, well, why the heck do you need me? Or they see right through you like, oh, you just need me because you need someone to, I don't know, whatever, co-read the ultrasound or something like that. Like, so you got to come in with like a little like, oh, I have this really great system of capturing these studies. And then I need to come up with a validation system. Can you come up with anything? Like, what do you do? And then maybe they go, oh, I'd be happy to read them for you. You know what I mean? But you can't go in there and say, and I want you to validate them. I think that's a little bit of just, kind of like human negotiation skills, which are probably the most important skills that you'll have to learn if you make research your number one priority.
Well, and that gets to one of the questions that I had written down here is like, how do you choose, as I have some very deep thoughts on this, like how do you choose who to collaborate with? Because when it's your project, you do get a lot of choice on who to collaborate with. And I feel like the dynamics of a team that you work with, you absolutely need a team. No research project is fun if you're trying to do it all by yourself. It's way too much work. First of all, you have nobody to vet all these small decisions with. And it's no fun, but bad team dynamics can just ruin the experience. So, so what are your thoughts on like who to choose to collaborate with? And what do you do when you have collaborators that are not working well with you?
So Lori, just to answer even the previous question, it depends on the type of the project, right? So there are projects, I have done everything, and I would just tell them, this is the data you need to collect. This is your responsibility. I have not gotten pushback saying that, you know what, you've done everything, all we're doing is data collection. I'm not a big part of the project. People just were happy that I did it, and they just want to collect the data. This includes collaboration with Dan and others when we did other work together. But there are some projects, like a reason study, it required a steering committee. Because now it's a big project, everybody is have their input. So some projects you actually have to meet and discuss, and everybody have something to contribute towards the project itself. How do you choose? That's a difficult thing, right? Friendship is different from collaboration. I think you have to make that number one distinction. Dan, just because Dan is my good friend for the last 15 years, I'm not going to ask Dan to collaborate with me for that reason. So I think you have to separate that. And expectations have to be set, right? And also, who has done those projects, who has completed those projects. You got some sense. Like when people reach out to you, there's a reason they're asking you. When people reach out to Dan, there's a reason they're asking you. So I think you have to look at their prior record. Just to go back what you guys said, bouncing ideas. How many people you talk to in an ASAP meeting, talk about research and ideas, and then the next meeting comes and the same people you talk to again, they'll have new ideas. These are the people, even though they're good friends, they're not your collaborators. The ones who actually email you back and where is the project and how do you want to do these projects are the ones you want to collaborate with. So, there's some track record you want to collaborate with. And the people like my former fellows, like one of you, or people I know them well, I know they can get the job done, or if they can't, they'll tell me up front, I can't do the project. So I think you really have to select the people you think, and still things can fall apart, but I think that's one of the strategies.
Yeah, like there's this category of person that like, they are willing to do anything. You'll tell them, you'll ask them to do something, they're more than happy to do it. And then there are people who are good critics. And it's like the perfect collaborator is the person that can do both. Like they really do get things done, but they are also very willing to think critically about the project as they're doing it. And if I find that if I have only one category of person, then that's really when things don't work well.
And I want to add one thing. You also need to see where they are, what stage of career they're like in their career advancement, where they are at. So I see there's hunger in some young faculty. They want to produce, they just need direction and guidance. And so they are there and they will do it. And some very senior faculty, tenured faculty, they just don't have time for everything to do, right? So you want to be careful how you want to collaborate with, what type of projects you want to collaborate with them. So.
Yeah. Do you have any techniques for stopping a collaboration if things are not working?
Actually, I'll give you the opposite way. We committed for a collaboration for a project, and 3 months into it, we realized, hey, this is not going to work. We immediately had a conference call and told them, I don't think we were going to drop out of the study because we're not going to participate because things are not moving like we're expected to. So, so definitely being honest about, even, like I said, that has happened to me. Vice versa, like that happened to pick the collaborators. Yeah. So that's life, and that could happen to anybody. So we got to be open to it, and then there are always like backup sites, and so you have to plan well for these things, whether it's a big study or a small study.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it. So the right partner, so that they will tell you, the collaborator, if something is not going well, they will not hold you hostage, right? So
I think upfront honesty, I've been thrown off a collaboration and I totally deserved it. And it came from me not saying no up front. I said yes. And then 18 months pass and they're like, did you ever get that past your IRB? And I was like, no, and they're like, well, we're not going to put you on the byline because all you did is talk to us. And I was like, I totally deserve that. I mean, it was like project number 20 for us, and it fell to the lowest level person, and I got thrown off. And so I kind of apply that same rule, and it's been applied as it's been applied to me. Like, if you're not doing work to move the project along, then you don't deserve to be a collaborator. Now, you have the important thing about a team is you have to know who leads it. So if you're like, oh, I'm collaborating with someone, but you're not the team leader, that's a very different role than when you're clearly the team leader and you've picked up collaborators. So I think when you're the leader, like Srikar said, you can turn around to someone and be like, hey, you're not pulling your weight. When you're the collaborator and you see yourself being the only one whose wheels are spinning, then you should move to become the team leader. So you have to have, and that involves difficult conversations that they don't teach you how to have in med school. But at one point you have to look someone in the eye and be like, hey, Srikar, we're good friends, but like, you're not enrolling enough tendinopathies for me. Are you guys really interested in this study? And I just want you to know, like, this is your way out. And you'd be surprised, because that study that I got thrown off of, I would have appreciated that conversation with them saying, hey, we see you're not enrolling. Do you really want to do this? And that would have given me the out. I would have been like, oh man, it's just the 20th project and I just don't have the bandwidth and I feel bad that I can't do it. And they'd be like, don't worry about it. Like, thanks for your contribution and let's sign off. And instead that got delayed till the very end when they were like, we submitted the paper and you're not on it. And I was like, thank you. Thank goodness I'm not on it, because I would feel terrible if I was on it, So a lot of those hard conversations are necessary conversations that they've never trained us to have. But you would be surprised at their reaction, Now, if you're going to throw someone off who's recruited as many people as you have, that's going to get ugly, but that's usually not the case. It's usually someone's said yes to you, gotten too busy, and is just unable to fulfill it. So a good measure is always like, where are you on the IRB, right? Lori, you and I were laughing about this because it happened to the two of us.
We both didn't make it in the reason 2A trial.
Right, that's right. Like, I'm just like, yes, I got approval. And then the next day I got an email saying reason 2A is closing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've just shuffled this through the IRB for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Because I didn't pawn it off to someone to do it for me.
Yeah.
And, it cost us. So.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the things that you've said ring true for like all difficult conversations that we have to have. There are some like kind of golden rules for having these difficult conversations. Do it with kindness, do it as earnest and open as you can, being both the giver and the receiver of this kind of information or disjointed collaboration, and doing it I feel like doing it in a phone call versus over email is always preferable also, just because that's how difficult conversations are best had. I was going to move on to writing, because we haven't got to talk about like your tips for writing. I think that this is something that is very intimidating. It is hard to get started. It is hard to believe that what you've got is good enough. It's hard to know when to stop writing, all of that. So if you guys can speak to those difficulties, I think that would be very helpful.
Srikar, you want to do this? I feel like
sure.
I can talk.
So, I mean, writing is something which is, I think, equally important doing research project, right? So we have done this project where how many abstracts have been converted to manuscript of 40%. So that means 60% ideas actually being executed as research projects, but never converted into manuscripts. This is an ultrasound world. This was back in, I guess, in 2010 or something like that. And I think it's going to be the same number if you do the study today. 50% of the abstracts may not be converted into manuscripts. And when obviously me and Dan are trained under Michael Blavis, that is one thing that man has done really good, writing, right? So, Lori, when you're with me, so what we have done is, a couple of things with Lori when we're here is like set a time. We're not doing it as a group, but set your own time and start writing for a 4-hour block or 5-hour block. And I think I had more success when I started writing things I already have done, that is methods, right? You know exactly the method section we have done. So you can start writing that part. And one thing I have learned over the time is you don't have to write the best manuscript. That's so intimidating. Like people, we have to do thorough research and everything has to be perfect. I'm like, you write the first draft and, you know, then everything else can be cleaned up. So it is critical, I think, not to think that I am going to write the best and the perfect manuscript. You don't need perfect manuscript to publish. Dan is a decision editor. He knows that. Even if you write a perfect manuscript, you'll still have a heavy criticism on your perfect manuscript, period. So don't write it. And the second thing is, which we have mastered here in our shop, is every project is 3 or 4 people are involved. Everybody gets a section and they have a deadline. They will turn that section in. And that makes it more manageable rather than one person, whatever the primary investigator writing the project. So I usually give the methods to the PI and the results to somebody, an intro and discussion to somebody else, and seem like we have better success by allocating those different sections to different people. And then we come together and, you know, clean up stuff. And I think so one strategy which really worked well in our shop.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, so I'm at Washington University, a huge research institution, and the most successful labs, this has nothing to do with emergency medicine, are the ones that do it the way Srikar do. Not just for a paper, but for a grant. So you want to know how people apply to like 10, you know, $50 million grants? They do that Srikar approach where it's like, well, they've got someone working on one section, on the other section, then they all come together, and that's a true team. And I just want to echo, I think the most difficult step in manuscript writing is version 1. It's kind of like, you know, you have to spring the trap on those people that like want to do something, but they're not going to do something until you give them something to criticize. Once you write version 1, that tends to get everyone's engines humming. Like, oh, you know, you didn't include this or you didn't include that. So, and version 1 sometimes has to be terrible. And some of the best papers that we've ever written that got published, especially on our like education of critical care ultrasound, were like awful at first, but everybody engaged and we made the paper better. And then they came out sounding really nice. So get version 1. And I think there's, many of you fellows are probably on your own right now or haven't had a systematic way of getting to the manuscript. But another smart thing I once heard is that you have to start with the protocol, right? So in your protocol, your introduction to the protocol becomes your background or your intro for your paper. And then the protocol, the sort of how we're going to do this, the methods should be taken also out of your protocol. Then the results are going to be brand new. And the discussion will obviously be based on the results. And then your results and your discussion turn into the background for your next paper. Does everybody see how that happens? So you're just constantly churning in a research direction. It's hard when you pivot from, say, like, you know, ocular ultrasound to chest ultrasound. But the bottom line is that if you did this right, to get through your IRB, you submitted a protocol. That protocol, you should be able to cut and paste into a paper. At least,
and then boom, you have version 1.
And then boom, you get version 1, yeah. and then you get onto the next one. And that is how the high level researchers are doing things. And then you put a team like Srikar has on top of that, and then like now you're running on steroids. Okay, you can just churn and churn and churn and churn.
Well, and somebody once told me that, like, as soon as you finish your IRB, start a manuscript draft document. And just take stuff from your IRB and make the intro, make the methods, and even write out what the results might look like, because you have your protocol of what data you're hoping to get. You put some lines in there, you know, X participants were enrolled. We got this data and we found this. And then in your discussion, you can also start to talk about, you know, some of the limitations are this, because you know all of that stuff already. And then you do your study, and then you get to open up manuscript draft number 1, and you have something to work with. So you get over that version 1 hump. Yeah.
And then you know, like in the industrial research world where people are, you know, the companies are giving us the protocol. So you basically, it's cut and paste into an IRB form, and then, you know, you get that stuff done. So really the key part is writing some form of protocol. when you, now I know, and Srikar, you can probably speak to this. I know like my mentor had a very loose no protocol, and we just collected data, and we would oftentimes start from the abstract. So we'd have a successful abstract submission, and then we'd build out from that. And I've also been told, like, if you're really stuck, start with your abstract, what you wrote on your abstract, and then you build each section out into the paper. And then another approach is start with your tables. So if you haven't written your abstract, start with your results, and then build your discussion, your intro, and then the methodology out of that. So those are all techniques. So there's many ways to skin the cat, but the bottom line is get something on paper and distribute it to your co-authors. That will get the engine going.
I see a comment in the comments from Hahad, a program called Cold Turkey with a word count limit or a time limit. I have heard of programs like this. I have like an app where I can't do anything on my phone or my computer for a certain period of time. And you kill off these fictional trees that you're growing if you touch your computer or try and do something else besides write. Those are all good productivity things. We are almost out of time. Did we miss any questions, Kay?
There is one question for the fellows or rising fellows. How do they know what projects to jump on board with and when to say no? And I think a lot of my past fellows have had this where their instinct is just be like, yes, 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 and then they're doing nothing, but on everything.
I think this is a very important question, and this is where you lose credibility if you say yes, because you are junior faculty, you have so many things, especially if you're just like an ultrasound director job somewhere, you just have way too many things to handle. So if you start agreeing to every project, and if you have other family commitments and things like that, you're just not going to be able to do those projects, and it would be awkward for you to commit. So you really need to map out what is feasible for you in your setting. And that is hard to say what is feasible for you. You need to think, you need to sit, what responsibilities do I have? What are the deliverables for me this year for the department? And so on. So I think it is very much an individual basis what projects to pick and what not to pick. I would definitely not participate in a multi-center study which requires reason. Like cardiac arrest patients, you have to enroll 50 or 50 sepsis patients and so on. You are not there yet. So I would just definitely agree to do some retrospective studies and things like that, education studies. So I think you have to take small chunks initially in the first couple of years, not go for the lottery prize. So.
Yeah, I think you're asking us, Srikar, I need to become a little bit of the oracle. So I'll tell you that at the Oracle of Delphi, I'm classically trained. There are two things that are written on the way out. One is know thyself, and the second one is everything in moderation. Okay, so know thyself, like Srikar said, if you just took a huge position and they want you to enroll 50 people, like you're not going to do that. And everything in moderation, like, well, you may not be able to enroll 50 people, but if they want you to enroll 2 or 3 and you've got a really hot researcher who's helping you, well, that might be doable. But you should find out if they'll still include you on the team if you can only give, moderately. So you really have to know those things about yourself, and you have to have situational awareness that, again, in residency and medical school, we teach that when you're caring for patients, but not so much about your own professional development.
Well, and part of knowing thyself is trying it and sometimes failing, and that's okay. But having the tools in hand to excuse yourself and know how to do that, and grow and learn from those experiences, I think, are key. Serially making that mistake will reflect very, very poorly on you.
And if you have a hard time saying no, your chairman or your program director is there to be the bad cop, right? So like I've told my fellows, when you go in to have this conversation, you say, I want to say yes, but Dan's not letting me.
Just blame it on.
All right, just blame it on me. I mean, and usually it's like some cross-departmental thing. They'll never like come talk to me or discuss it with me. And I don't know, Srikar, if you've ever had to play bad cop or even my chair has sometimes said like, he just doesn't have the time for that. You know, I want to do it, but you know, he's got me on another project. I just can't do it. That's one way to say no and still come out. But I want to do it in the future. You know, that's one way to say no in a nice passive way is use the person above you, your supervisor, as your shield.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Shrikar.
Oh, I said I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're about out of time. I very much appreciate everybody being here and all of the questions and the engagement. I appreciate it. I hope that you have learned something that pays dividends in your life going forward. And thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for inviting us, Larry.
Your fan club's on, Shrikar. I don't
And
know if you saw that.
Just a heads up, guys, we will be having our next one in the first week of April, probably, talking about working with industry.
Oh, and one more quick announcement for fellows before you get off. They'll be coming over the AEUS listserv very soon. Well, fellows and everybody, we are going to have at SAEM's annual meeting this year a Sonos soapbox. So if you have a strong opinion about anything ultrasound related and you want to get up and talk about it for 5 minutes, we're going to have a competition. This is your moment to be the opinionated person. I think it'll be really fun. So, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for coming, Shrikar and Dan.
Bye.
Dan.